Welcome to Conversations on the Coast, the Bay Area's premier author interview program. And I feel honored today because with us is a Pulitzer Prize-winning author. Her name is Elizabeth Strout, and she has written a new novel. It is called The Burgess Boys, published by Random House, and last week's New York Times Book Review told me it is on its bestseller list, entering at number 3. Is that not true?
That's true.
Wow. Congratulations.
Well, thank you.
What a nice start.
It was a very nice start, yes.
Yes. Very, very nice. The book that we're talking about today is called The Burgess Boys for a very good reason, because it's centered on these two gentlemen, both Burgess Boys. One of them has a twin sister. She's also involved in the story. And it's very much a story that works around the kind of family that they are and where they come from. And where do they come from?
Well, originally they come from Shirley Falls, Maine.
Yes. And they can't get away from that.
Well, they try. They'd like to try. They have tried.
Well, it is a book that I think delves deeply into people and place, the place in Maine and some and some other places. But let's talk about this place in Maine, Sterling Falls.
Shirley Falls.
Shirley Falls. It's a somewhat typical New England town, I think, as you describe it, except for the presence of an increasing number of Somalis.
That's right.
I found that very fascinating.
Well, a lot of people in Maine have found it very fascinating, too.
It's one of the things that I believe nationally we take a certain pride in, the fact, for example, that you can find authentic Vietnamese food in Terre Haute, Indiana, for example,
right.
and so on. But what you focus on here a bit, at least, are the difficulties of that situation.
Well, it's a relatively new situation. I mean, a decade old maybe at this point. But Maine is, I believe, or has been, and I think it still is, the whitest of all 50 states and also the oldest of all 50 states. So it was some adjustment, there was some adjustment necessary as a darker skinned population began to move into some of these smaller cities. And they originally arrived in Portland, Maine, to enter our country after their Civil War there. But Portland, Maine is very precious. A lot of people like it, so the rents are a little high. And so then the Somali population found out that 30 or 40 miles west is a town, and they could live there more cheaply. And by their standards, it was much more safe. So, in fact, they have come to the state of Maine, and it's been quite an adjustment for many people who live there.
And they came into our country by invitation.
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
I mean, because it's not to say they were 100% welcome.
Exactly. That's right. But they have every right and reason to be here.
And the Somalis themselves are what you might think they would be, very uncomfortable in many ways. They
Sure.
don't speak the language.
That's right.
They have a different cuisine. Their religion is different.
And they've been traumatized. I mean, what they've gone through has been just hellacious before they even got here. And the ones who have arrived here have most likely lived in one of the camps in Kenya for many, many years before even making it here. So the older members of that community have been really traumatized, and then they are making this enormous adjustment into a community that has no idea what to make of them, really.
Oh dear.
Yeah.
Yep. No, it's handled very well. I mean,
thank you.
One of the things that you do is that you put us in a way in their shoes by creating a character whose name I will joyfully mispronounce. Abdikarim, I think. Abdikarim. I was close.
You were very close.
Put down a close for me. this character, Abdul Karim, is wonderful for this purpose because you have him not so much talking but musing.
Yes.
About
yes.
what he's feeling, how
yes.
what's going on is affecting him, and so on.
Right. It's a big choice for me whether or not to take on the point of view of a Somali character, because most of the book, of course, is the point of view of the Burgesses, the various, Burgess people and their family members. But I did think that for those smaller areas that involve the Somalis, I thought I'd better take that imaginative leap. So I did a lot of reading, and
I think it works. It works beautifully.
Thank you.
It really does. Now, as you say, the main focus is on the Burgess family and the brothers, one of whom I would describe as at least if not the main character in the book, who is also one of the most unlikable fellows in recent fiction. And his name is Jim, which is also my name. So I'm somewhat, never mind. At any rate, I don't know whether you can give a short description of him. So I think maybe we will, hold on that.
Okay.
We'll hold on that until we come back.
Okay.
You're listening to Conversations on the Coast with Jim Foster. Follow us on Twitter at Jim Foster COC or send an email to jimfostercoc@gmail.com.
The Pulitzer Prize-winning Elizabeth Strout has joined us today to talk not about her Pulitzer Prize-winning book Olive Kitteridge, but rather about her latest novel called The Burgess Boys. Kirkus Reviews said something that we're going to prove. They said, this is a very short thing from Kirkus, that Strout's writing is undeniably graceful and observant. Now, to prove that, we're going to let you read from the book, and that'll take care of that problem. You're going to read from the prologue, did
yes.
you say?
Yes.
Okay.
I'm going to read just the very ending of the prologue, which sort of explains how the book gets written, fictionally explains. The narrator talks with her mother. The narrator lives in New York and talks to her mother, who lives back in Shirley Falls. And so it began, like a cat's cradle connecting my mother to me and me to Shirley Falls. Bits of gossip and news and memories about the lives of the Burgess kids supported us. We reported and repeated. I told my mother again about the time I had come across Helen Burgess, Jim's wife, when they lived, as I once did, in the neighborhood of Park Slope in Brooklyn. My husband and I one night found ourselves dining near Helen and a friend in a Park Slope cafe, and we stopped near Helen's table as we were leaving. I had had some wine, I suppose that's why I stopped, and I said to her I'd come from the same town Jim had grown up in. Something happened to Helen's face that stayed with me. A look of quick fear seemed to pass over it. She asked my name, and I told her, and she said Jim had never mentioned me. No, I was younger, I said. And then she arranged her cloth napkin with a little shake and said, I haven't been up there in years. Nice to meet you both. Bye-bye. My mother thought that Helen could have been friendlier that night. She came from money, remember. She'd think she was better than someone from Maine. This sort of remark was when I had learned to let go. I no longer bothered myself with the defensiveness of my mother and her Maine. But after Susan Burgess's son did what he did, after the story about him had been in the newspapers, even in the New York Times and on television too, I said on the phone to my mother, I think I'm going to write the story of the Burgess kids. It's a good one, she agreed. People will say it's not nice to write about people I know. My mother was tired that night. She yawned. Well, you don't know them, she said. Nobody ever knows anyone.
Your mother's probably right, But
I think so.
On the other hand, as a novelist, you can do that.
Exactly.
Which is the beauty of it all, isn't it?
You've got it exactly. That is the fun of being a novelist is finally being able to pretend that we know what it's like to be another person.
Now, the fellow that was written up in the New York Times and all like that is Jim Burgess.
Jim Burgess is one of the brothers,
and,
yes.
He is, I'll say it, he's an unlikable character in many, many ways. One of the ways, which really annoyed me, but you did so well I could kill him, was the way he poo-pooed everything about his brother Bob.
Mm-hmm. Well, this is why it's called the Burgess Boys, because even though they're actually the Burgess men in the book, their relationship has been caught, as siblings often are, in their boyhood, when this tragedy occurred which killed their father when they were very young. There's a certain part of their childhood that just stayed right there. And so what appears to other people as abusive kind of behavior from Jim to Bob is, in fact, I think, just the way they communicate, because that's when, he's just an older brother. He's 5 years older, and when you're little, that's a lot. And Bob has adored him, and Jim has, as we come to see in the book, has been sitting on a great deal and is filled with a lot of secrets. And so he's speaks in this way to Bob, and Bob takes it, and Bob is the first to say to his sister-in-law, no, it's okay, he's just being my brother. So in my version, as I wrote it and saw it, it's just their way of communicating. But I do understand that it's not everybody's cup of tea to talk to somebody that way.
Well, since they're both lawyers, let me testify about the situation of what Jim thinks about Bob. At one point, he says, "What in the world makes you think you know squat about anything?" About his brother, fellow lawyer. And at another time, "You know nothing, just nothing, you cretinized bozo."
Well, yeah, it's not nice.
These are not loving remarks.
No. Well, no, I don't know if they're not loving remarks. They're not polite remarks.
You got that.
Yeah.
Got that
They're
right.
not polite remarks.
They're not. All right. But as much as I didn't like some of the things he did, Jim is an absolutely brilliant lawyer. And you tell us about one great trial success he had with a rock and roll character, I think.
A singer, yeah.
A singer by the name of Wally Packer.
That's right.
How did that come about?
Well, that's what made Jim famous earlier on in his career, and this has been a defining also. First there was the father's death when they were kids, and then Jim was very bright and went off to Harvard Law School and married somebody with money, and then became famous with this trial that captured a great deal of public attention. And so he's had some very, very high points in his life, and it would appear that he'd managed to leave his past behind with this kind of success. But, Bob follows him everywhere he goes. And
one of the things that I think of when I think about Jim is he's kind of like the walking definition of self-assured in spades.
That is what he appears to be.
Yeah. And that's very important. It's what he appears to be.
Exactly.
It's not exactly what he is, and for very good reason.
That's right.
And we may look at some of that when we return.
You're listening to Conversations on the Coast with Jim Foster. Follow us on Twitter at JimFosterCoc or send an email to jimfostercoc@gmail.com.
Elizabeth Strout is our guest today. Her new book is called The Burgess Boys. In the last segment, we learned why it's boys and not men, because so much of the way they relate as adults is kind of boyish. This woman can really write. I put some notes down here. You take us in this book to many places, and one of the places is one of those Caribbean island resorts, I think.
Yes, that's right.
And you tell the story of an unhappy vacation beautifully. I kept thinking, this poor woman must have had this kind of vacation, where the husband gets up early in the morning and showers, there is no romance, and heads for the golf course, and comes back and then goes out and plays 9. Having 27 holes of golf in the day and nothing for his honey. I mean, the way you write that is marvelous. I wanted to kick the guy.
Well, he's a runner, you know. I mean, running. I don't mean a runner as a marathon runner.
Yeah,
he's
running from his
he's
past.
He's running. He's
and his
always
present.
running. He's running from himself, really.
Yeah.
Of course.
There's another scene where his wife, whose name is
Helen,
is at a fancy dinner in some fancy apartment, I guess, in New York.
That's Pam, Bob's ex-wife.
Oh, Pam. I'm sorry, that was Pam.
Yeah.
And what happens to end the conversation? I mean, you can't say it on the air, but they're talking about this and that, and then the woman with a southern accent.
Oh, I can't say it on the air. You're right.
But she says F this.
Right. Well, It's a New York dinner party, and they, had a little bit of wine, and this southern woman takes umbrage at
what's being said in general.
Yes.
And she just silences
she
the entire party.
Lets it rip there. Yep. Mm-hmm.
Y'all shut up. But no, it's just in these different settings.
Yeah,
you really capture it,
yeah.
and it's wonderful. There's another main character in here, a young boy,
right?
Zachary Olson.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Tell us about him and how he moves the plot along.
Well, Zachary is the Burgess Boys' nephew. He's the son of the sister Susan, who remained back in Maine, and his father left the family 7 years ago. He's an adolescent.
And Susan and Robert are twins.
Susan and Robert are twins. And yet Susan's been alone. She's been alone trying to raise this son who is, for whatever reasons, just not, quite, what she expected. He's not particularly personable or athletic or, he's just, kids don't always turn out the way you think. And she has done the best she could, but she doesn't know really what's up with him. And then
the way you write that birth narrative, if she could, she would have given him back.
Well, except she loves him. She does love him very much.
Yeah.
She just didn't know what to do.
It's so different from what you expected, I guess, and wanted.
Yeah.
And again, that's history, backstory, as we call it,
right.
which you can't get rid of.
Right, that's right.
It's there,
and she's tried. And more disturbing, I think, is the fact that she feels that that her husband was so disappointed with him, and that if he had been different, maybe the marriage would have remained. So she's carrying around all of that, and then lo and behold, he goes and does this ridiculous and bad thing, very bad thing, of throwing a pig's head through the local mosque. And he honestly, I think, doesn't quite even get how bad that was.
I agree.
Yeah.
I agree.
Yeah.
And then
so she hysterically calls her brothers, both of them are lawyers, and they're supposed to come up and rescue her. And so, or rescue Zach, and so they try. They try.
Saying that this childish act becomes a cause célèbre is putting it mildly. I mean, the town goes berserko.
Well, yeah, it's a pretty bad thing to have happened to the town. And so I thought that it would be novelistically interesting to back away from that and try and see it more from Zach's point of view or from Susan's point of view, particularly the mother's. Like, what in the world? How did this happen? What do we do? So.
Not only they, but the state of Maine goes nuts too.
Yes, sure. They're trying to do the right thing, really. I think trying to use what resources they have legally and socially, and to tell the state we don't condone this behavior, as they should not. But then it's Zach,
And in the end, as that legal proceeding goes on and on because of what's happening to him in his private life.
Yeah.
The lawyer who's on his feet, so to speak, is not Jim, it's Bob.
Right.
That was a pleasant surprise.
Right.
I cheered.
Oh, good.
I like that. I like that a lot. And the other person that I think I'll remember for a long time is Helen.
Yeah.
What a sad situation she's in.
Well, she is at the moment. We don't know if she will, if it. I purposely left that open for the readers to decide themselves, according to their own life experiences, what happens with Helen. Because, this is a situation that's not uncommon in this country.
No, it's not.
And can go either way.
Ooh, boy, oh boy. Boy, oh boy. Who's your favorite character that you've put into this book?
That's always an interesting question, because as I go, I just end up loving them all. I'm sorry, that's
called a cop-out.
I was just going to say that's a cop-out. I was just going to say that. Well, I'm sorry. No, I'm not sorry. I actually really did love Jim. I think because I found him the most tortured.
Yes.
And so I had a real deep love for him, or whatever you would want to call this fictional relationship that I have with these made-up people.
Deep and crisp, all at the same time.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. Sliceless.
That's what it is.
Right.
Well, if you are interested in really reading something that thinks deeply and expresses very well what family life is all about and what the relationships between people in a family are all about, this really is the book for you. And it's a good one. It is called The Burgess Boys, the author Elizabeth Strout. This has been Conversations on the Coast, and I'm Jim Foster.
Follow us on Twitter at Jim Foster COC, or send an email to jimfostercoc@gmail.com.